Welcome to Season 3 of the Kayak Bass Connection Podcast. This is the official podcast of the Southern Illinois Kayak Club Bass Tournament Trail. I'm your host, Jared. So let's talk some bass fishing. So we've got 3 anglers on this episode with a wide range of experience. One's an experienced tournament winner, and the other 2 guests are fairly inexperienced, and they'll be starting their rookie seasons this year in the Kayak Bass Tournament Trail. So I've asked those 2 newer anglers to come loaded with questions. So stick around and we might all learn something. So first of all, let's go ahead and meet our guests tonight. Our experience, well, I'm just going to call you a pro, Dustin. I've seen you fish. How many wins have you got on the circuit? Do you know off the top of your head?
Not many, just 2
Not
or
many.
something.
I don't know. I remember
I think only one live event. That was Newton, and then 1 monthly. I mean, I always get 3rd and 2nd, and then 5th through 10. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that when I started the tournament trail, it just seemed like you were always in the top 3 or 4 in every single tournament.
Yeah, I never can beat Darren's. He always wins. Now I never can beat Dalton. He always wins. But
those guys are tough. They're real tough. And you also competed last year on the 2024 Crossroads team. Did a great job there. So we also, and by the way, I mentioned he's from Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And our 2 newest anglers that we have on, Keith Gessler from Troy, also the southern part of the state. Welcome on board, Keith.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And then you bet. And we also have Jake Gasaway from Leroy, Illinois. So, hey, welcome to the podcast, Jake. Glad to have you. I know that both of you expressed that you're not real experienced in the kayak tournaments. Have either one of you done any type of tournament fishing at all, boats or whatever?
No, I actually I met a couple guys from the club online, and James, he's the Midwest kayak guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I'm just like on social media and stuff, and they told me about an online tournament that was for one of the hurricane for North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
That happened the whole month of, I believe it was October.
Yeah.
So they told me, go get a board and practice here so that next year when you come join the club, you'll have an understanding how to do it. So I actually did that month long for the hurricane victims of North Carolina. So that's my only experience doing that. And I did it two different times for a couple of hours. But besides that, I've never done any tournament at all.
All right. Great. That was great advice to do that. What about you, Jake?
I fished 2 tournaments with the group last year.
Okay.
I fished Banner Marsh and caught 1 fish, I think, that scored 9 inches long the whole entire day. Yeah. And then I caught a limit at Coffeen and missed the big bass by a half an inch.
Oh, man. That's tough. Well, so it's great to see both of you going to be members this year and going to go live on the tournament trail. So I guess we can just get started. What are some overriding questions that come through your mind before you get ready to start your first full rookie season?
Well, I mean, mine is, the simple things of learning how to fish along other people. There's been times when I've been on a lake and there's been other tournaments that, you roll up to the lake and all of a sudden you see a line of boats and the last thing I want to do is be in somebody's way, so, I'm navigating around other people, trying to not, infringe on theirs. If, they're trying to make, they're trying to fish and I'm just out there having fun. Well, now I'm out there fishing. I don't want to get in somebody his way where he's leading the board and I'm over here with no fish. I come cruising up and ruining a spot. The last thing I want to do is, make the unwritten rules and that sort of thing. I guess is what I'm most worried about.
Yeah. Pretty easy one. You see someone casting and you're just I always just ask. I mean, if you're at all concerned about being in somebody's way, just ask.
Communication.
Yeah, just communication. Everybody's pretty friendly. So, I don't know what to do with the boat guys. I always just they always get in my way. So that's, I can't tell you how many times I've been working a bank and a boat cut me off and you're just like, well, that's that. So.
Yeah, even the boat guys, when they get close, I at least try to talk to them. I'm not going to jump their case necessarily unless they're doing something really outrageous, but I'll at least just start a conversation with them just so they know that I see them.
Yeah, the worst lake I always had with boats, the worst lake I always had with boats getting in the way was Newton, just because there's always multiple tournaments on that lake in the spring. And I remember being cut off on going to a point 2 times in a row. And I'm like, oh, this sucks. But there's always other places to fish.
That, and I guess the other one would be just fishing so many different lakes I've never been to. Just seeing the list of lakes you guys had. I've only been on Coffeen a handful of times. I actually know that pretty well, consider how much I fish. And I've only been to Cedar for about 3 hours one time, and Pyramid the same day for about 3 hours. Everything else I've never been to in these lakes. So trying to figure out what kind of lakes they are.
Well, yeah. Everybody prepares differently. I like to fish the day before. I always do better the day before the tournament just for fun. But yeah, Darren and I and some other guys, James, we always try to get out there on Friday, the day before the tournament, just to fish and have fun and kind of screw around, see who can win the non-counting day of fishing. Darren always wins that too, which is always kind of annoying. But I got close last year one time. And then there's guys like Dalton. Dalton gets the lake map books and he just combs the books and kind of looks for drop-offs and points and places that he thinks fish will be at different times of the year. And he just shows up Saturday morning and goes after that. But either way, I mean, if you want to do good, you have to prepare. There's very few people that are just going to show up cold at a lake they haven't been to. Even if you've been to it, if I just show up cold at a lake without doing any preparation whatsoever, I'm not going to do good. I mean, there's a million websites. Some of the lakes are better than others. Like Newton has a really good temperature chart online where you can kind of see what the cold and hot arm are doing. Sankers has a pretty good one too. But yeah, you pretty much have to prepare some way, somehow to figure out what you're going to do and hope that your preparation pays off if you can't fish the day before. And even if you can fish the day before, you have to be real efficient with what you're doing because you only got 6+ hours, depending on what your drive was up to the lake. And yeah, it's tough, but the nice thing is after you get a couple times on some of these lakes, you kind of have an idea of where you want to go and areas of the lake that tend to hold bigger fish, and
Just
then
follow
that helps.
the right spot and follow them. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that. Just try to follow guys that you think know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think my first tournament was when Banner Marsh. Dalton hung out back towards the boat ramp, and then he slipped off into a special little hole.
Yeah.
Well, when I believe the guy who runs it, Josh is his name, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When I signed up, we were going back and forth on emails. As soon as I signed up, just sending me, and he sent me a link to one of your podcasts. That's how I ended up kind of listening to a few of them. And I think every podcast I heard Dalton's name. So I guess this is the guy that he's killing everybody, I guess, huh?
Yeah, Dalton and Darren are kind of the
and Darren, yeah, both of those guys.
Those are the guys you're usually chasing. They're pretty good, unfortunately.
Yeah, trust me.
Well, I told him I just donate my money and hopefully I can win them,
Well, it's fun. I mean, and you'd be surprised how everybody's got a different ceiling that they get to at different times. And I remember when Dalton's first year, every tournament he'd come up to me and be like, "What'd you get?" And I'd tell him, he'd be like, "Shoot, you just beat me." And I'd be like, "Yeah, you suck." And then now I get back to the ramp and it's the opposite. It's like, "What'd you get?" And he's like, "Oh, 92." And I'm like, "Oh shit." So, you just prepare, try to figure out what other people are doing. And I mean, listening to what the people say at the end is always my favorite, seeing what different lures people are using and catch fish, because I mean, sometimes it's real surprising.
Have you been in the kayak for a while? I mean, outside of fishing, have you fished outside of a kayak in a boat, or has it mostly been kayak? Or
fished a little bit of both. I never fished in any boat tournaments. The only tournaments I've ever done were kayak tournaments. But
and each year, as you've been in the kayak and this club, I mean, has it improved, or I mean, did you start off at the bottom like I'm going to be starting, and it's
I started off way down. Josh and I think Lee are the last 3 people that were at the first Siegle tournament ever, and I don't think either 3 of us got a limit. I don't even think either 3 of us caught a fish. I think Lee turtled his kayak, and it was like 30 degrees outside, so it was an emergency. So he had to go home and lost all of his gear. And I don't think Josh caught any fish, and I didn't catch any fish. I think I limited in one tournament my first year. It's definitely a little different than just going out and play fishing. I mean, I started fishing out of a kayak probably in 2013, maybe 2012, 2013. And I didn't do my first live tournaments until 2017, 2018, at least for largemouth. I think I did a couple inshore tournaments.
Because you were worried you weren't going to be able to do well, or is that just because,
No, there just weren't any around.
Okay.
I mean, all we had that in terms of before Six started, the closest live tournament we had here was at Kentucky Lake for the big national championship. And I fished that one. I think that was in 2018, 2019 or something. And then we had one of the KBF trail events came to Lake of Egypt once. And that was a terrible day. It was like 30 degrees and snowing outside and sleeting. And I fished that one. And then the league started the next year. And then that was, started doing it. But before that, I did online monthly tournaments. I did those for a few years, but those kind of suck. I don't like the online tournaments. But that's just my opinion. Guys with honey holes win every time.
Yeah, I had that same experience with the online tournaments. Is that you always know at the end of the month somebody that lives next to the lake that produces the biggest, the biggest bass in the state is gonna drop 100 inches on it.
To me, I always suggest everybody getting started to sign up for some of those monthlies because it gets you in the routine of measuring your fish. So you get the idea of that I got to measure this fish. Here's how I measure it. Here's the process. But then after you get beat by the guy putting up 110 inches 3 months straight, it's kind of like, I quit. This is stupid.
That's what it was. The one I did for the North Carolina thing, where I think the first day I put up 92 inches on the first day. I was excited as could be, and I think James, he's the one to talk me into doing it. He put up 95 on his first day, so I was unable to fish one more time, and I think I ended up with 95. But James was like 101 inches or something within 3 days, and everybody else was in Texas, Georgia, 100 and 108.
Yeah, and I know where James is going. He's going. There's a couple big bass spots down here, and I mean we all go to those same ones. I mean when they first started doing those KBF monthlies, Southern Illinois won the Illinois monthly every month because it was one guy fishing in this same spot, and we could all go do that. It's the fun. It's just kind of boring after a while, but sometimes we go there for fun though. Put $20 in a hat and see who can catch the biggest fish. Yeah. Darren always wins that too. So that's.
So Darren's the one going to be falling around all the time. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yes.
There's a reason I think he's been the most frequent podcast guest we've had since we started. Yeah, and on your Keith about the different lakes, to me that's one of the great things about being involved in the tournament trail, because you're going to go to lakes that you probably maybe not even know about, but probably could not even, maybe wouldn't fish there. Life gets busy, so this way you've got it on your schedule. It's like, I'm going to go fish, say Newton, or I'm going to go fish, Coffeen, when you might find some reason not to go otherwise. But now that you got money riding on it, you got to go.
Well, I mean, when I got my kayak and I use it for, I went out basically all of November of 23 and I blanked every single time. I don't even think I got a bite. I was in a paddle and a Jackson, a big rig Jackson paddle in it. You imagine that. And then in the spring, I went out a couple of times and started catching little fish here and there. And I got a pedal drive for it. I put in a pedal drive, so that improved greatly, just being able to deal with the wind and stuff. But I'm just hoping to continue to keep learning a little bit as we go, because I went times where I would blank or just get one fish. And by the end of the summer, I was having a decent success, but it was only at one lake. So all these other lakes that you guys have on the schedule is going to be something where I'm going to have to either get there or probably learn to blank a lot.
Yeah. There's a lot of them on there that I've never even been to. Yeah, I'm excited to go, but it's just, they said Pyramid State Park, and it's like, pull out a map, and it's like, all right, where am I going? I don't even...
Put your kayak in somewhere. And
that's amazing. I mean, even growing up, I'm not used to fishing grass, and it seems like that's what a lot of is in a lot of these lakes. I've never done it. So there's hard for me to learn.
There's a reason why it seems like the same lures always win here, and it's primarily because of the grass. I mean, chatterbaits work well because they're good grass lure. Buzzbaits, good grass lure. I mean, stuff that's easy to get in and out of grass is usually what the best baits are. But then a lot of guys do well fishing grass lines with weird stuff. Some of the guys do more offshore fishing and try to fish offshore structure and rocks and stuff. And if you want to get out of the grass, that's the best way to do it. I always hated the grass. So when I first started fishing in Southern Illinois, my philosophy was to fish offshore and stay away from grass, which is a little challenging, but it's definitely doable.
Yeah, Dustin, don't you also, I mean, the tactic I've seen you use a lot is kind of scouting out one spot and
Yeah, I don't
staying.
like to move a lot. I've always said if I have a good tournament day, if I've moved maybe a quarter mile and that's it.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I like I said, I go out the day before and I kind of have a systematic approach to trying to find good spots, and then usually, I think every single time I've gotten a top 3 finish, I've fished the same spot the entire day. Just never moved. I mean, I'm little grassy. I have a really nice area. Kincaid, I don't think I've ever gotten worse than 3rd place at Kincaid, and I literally catch all my fish off one spot every single time. It's really stupid. But fish tend to go to the same place to feed, and if you can find a spot where fish go to feed, I mean, you can hang out there forever. That tournament I won at Newton, I didn't move the entire day. Got to a spot, anchored down, fished one spot the entire day. So there's definitely some different strategies. Like I said, you don't think that you got to be the guy that's running banks and throwing moving baits, because that does work. I mean, guys do really well doing it, but you can also kind of find good brush piles, good rock piles, and just sit, and they'll let them come to you. And that's, sometimes it gets kind of boring. I always bring a radio, just turn the radio on, listen to a football game or something, and just sit out and throw a jig at the same brush pile for 8 hours.
So I'm assuming that's something where I've heard where people will just go out and scan lakes and find spots like in the wintertime or whatever. So it's there. You're prepared for that, or?
Yeah, oh yeah, you know the spots are there. The problem is I always kind of thought those spots would never go away, but then you realize after 10 plus years that you do start getting some weird turnover. Like a lot of my brush piles at Southern Cedar are gone. Pretty much, I think all the natural brush is pretty much dead from there. So now I can hardly catch a fish down in Southern Cedar Lake anymore. But up north, there's tons of brush piles. Sit on those brush piles all day. It's great.
Is this an older lake, or?
What's that?
Isn't an older lake? Is that why all the brush is deteriorating, I guess?
I think it's because it was a younger lake, and now it's just getting to the point where a lot of that brush is gone. But the IDNR throws a lot of that fake stuff down there, but I never catch any good largemouth off the fake stuff. I try to stay away from those. But people illegally dump structure down there all the time too, and you can find that stuff. But side scan's really nice for finding that kind of stuff. Just cruise around. Like on pre-fishing days, I usually, on the Friday before a tournament, I pretty much will just go out and look at the temperature, look at lake temperature, and then kind of figure out what depth I want to fish, and then just look for structure at those depths, depending on points or secondary points, depending on where I think the fish will be, and then spend an hour or so at each spot, and pick one for the tournament. And if I can't find a good spot, then I'm beating banks, and that's.
I mean, do you go in with like a plan, plan A, plan 2, plan B?
Yeah.
Is where if one doesn't work, you're switching spots, and that, I mean,
yeah,
so
you
the day of that morning.
Yeah, I think somebody posted. There's I think a video talking about this at one point. But I mean, when I find a spot that I think is going to be good on pre-fishing day, I fish it for an hour or two, or till when I catch 2 fish. And I kind of learned that approach from this guy Luke Brozovich, who used to be in the league. And then I record how long it took me to catch 2 fish, the size of the fish, and then I move on to the next spot. And if I spend an hour and don't catch 2, then maybe I catch 1 or none. I report that, how big the fish was, if I caught 1 or not. Then I go to the next spot and do the same thing. And at the end of the day, I look at all those spots and go, all right, I caught two big fish here really quick. That'll be the spot I start. And if I go there and spend an hour and I catch nothing, I go to the next best spot and just keep moving. And until I find one where fish are hitting. And then there's some days where they don't come. I mean, I know Little Grassy last year, holy cow, when I pre-fished that lake, every brush pile off a deep point I stopped at, I pulled an 18-inch fish. One of them I got a 20-inch fish off of, all within 15 minutes. And then tournament day, I pulled 118 off one of those spots, and that was it. And then I got all my fish shallow that day because I couldn't find any more out deep. But yeah, it's just you learn different approaches. You just kind of talk to people and see how they figure out stuff.
Now, Dustin, you mentioned looking at depth. Do you look at the depth that you see bait fish at? Does that have something to do with where you try to find structure at that depth?
No, I usually look for, after post spawn, when the thermocline starts setting up, you just look for the thermocline because fish are going to be eating right on top of the thermocline. And usually that's where you'll see all the bait fish stacked up too. It's just kind of in a line on the thermocline. And then just look for brush piles offshore that are just on top of the thermocline because that's where they'll be feeding. So, it's a pain. When you get out there and you talk to people, you'll see a lot of people use different strategies. It's nice.
Everything I hear from listening to the podcast so far is it's find your confidence bait, find your confidence bait, find your confidence bait.
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, some of the best seasons I've had. Sometimes when you do real good in a year, you think you figured it out, but then you kind of look back and go, God, that was just a really good year for my confidence bait. Like the year I won Angler of the Year. So I went to 7 tournaments. I think we had 7 tournaments that year. So 35 fish would be how many fish I posted that year. I got limited every tournament. And 31 of the fish I posted to win Angler of the Year were on the same jig. I threw that jig all year at every lake. And then the next year, I couldn't catch a damn fish on that day. So it's like, was I really good then, or was it just perfect? It was my year. So you never know. I always say my biggest advice, and I know everyone's at a different age of brain power, but I'm a big checklist person. I make a checklist on my phone, and I have a little notes app or whatever it is. Yeah. And I always make checklists for everything I have to bring because I can tell you my first live tournament I ever went to, it was the one at Lake of Egypt, and I showed up there without any tackle because I left my tackle in the garage. And so I didn't catch a fish that day, but all I really had were empty hooks and one crankbait that some guy gave me that he found snagged. So it's pretty bad day. So I like checklists a lot. I make sure I have everything, and no matter how routine it gets, I always end up forgetting something if I don't have that checklist.
I will second that. Checklists are a big deal for me too. I have 3 checklists that never leave the truck: one for fishing, one for hunting, and one for camping.
Yeah. When I was younger, I didn't need them though.
No, I've been running checklists since I think we got the schedule.
Yeah.
Trying to reorganize the kayak on.
Yeah.
Where things are going to go.
Yeah, that's it. And I found out that one of my unanticipated struggles was just boat control. I started out with a kayak with a New Canoe Pursuit, and I had started with paddling it, and then realized that once I got where I wanted to go, I couldn't stay there because I was either fishing or paddling, not both. And then,
those new canoes spin on you too.
Yeah, yeah, because it doesn't have any rudder in the back of it.
Yeah,
and then after that, I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out how to control it. With anchors, and eventually put a bow mount trolling motor on it. But that's if you're not used to just trying to control it in the wind, that's a completely new skill.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I quit on those windy days now. So you just go home, go up this, just quit.
So I'm the same way when it gets cold. I can't do the cold, man.
Yeah, I don't do the cold either. Those are shit. I'm not going to go out and fish in the cold anymore. But yeah, another one I always get to that I'm terrible at, that I feel like I could have done a lot better in tournaments last year if I would take my advice and do this, but check your knots and retie all the time, because I never retie and I always lose fish in tournaments. I lost a big one at Coffee not retying, throwing swim jigs into the brush piles all day, and I finally hooked one, and then it broke right off. I'm like, so it's definitely take your time to retie knots if you're fishing around rocks or sticks and stuff. That'll help you, because it's nothing more aggravating than losing a fish because you have a bad knot or your line's getting all beat up.
That's kind of just being fishing for basically 1 year now. Since I haven't picked up a rod since 1994 for about probably 4 or 5 trips. Before that, I was probably 14. So, and that was back in the 80s. So I'm just casting right now accurately is going to be a battle for me. Tie knots, I know how to tie knots, but they're not always perfect. So those types of things, I need to get the muscle memory back, and the repetitive is just doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, I don't know why. Every year though, I always say the same thing to new people. Just take your time. It's you watch the pros on TV, and they catch a fish, and they take 5 minutes retying line between fish catches to make sure that they're not going to lose the good one that they catch and or they hook. And every time I say that though, I still am terrible. I'll be out there and I know I need to change my leader or retie a leader, and I'm just like, I'd rather just be fishing. And then I lose a fish, and I'm like, and it's but you're definitely not in near as much of a hurry as you think you are. I mean, you got time to retie stuff. But for some reason, I don't like to do that, and I just break off fish all the time.
Mine's keeping them on the measuring board.
Yeah, that's rough. That's why that's one of 2 reasons I went with the Hobie Pro Angler, because it's pretty hard to lose a fish out of that thing because of the big gunnels on the side. But I did lose one when I was pre-fishing at Kincaid. I had one hop out. Those were really aggressive fish. But other than that, I've never lost a fish in the Hobie. That's my selling point.
I lost 2 last year, one tournament, and killed me.
It's
I
hard
lost
to lose
one last year.
It's really hard to lose a fish in the Hobie. That's my selling point.
And see, that's when the kayak that I bought, my first kayak that I did the first tournament in was a Sea Stream. And that thing, I fished when I did Caffeine, it was terrible. I mean, it got you where you wanted to go, but trying to control it. It had the propeller drive. It was the prop drive, and it was Banner Marsh was weeds everywhere.
Yeah.
And then I got hooked up with James, bought a whale shark, and fished Caffeine last year. And yeah, it's pretty wide, pretty deep. But yeah, I had one fish last year that I sat him down, just grabbed my phone, and he decided he wanted back in the water more than my picture needed.
Yeah, getting those photos that's like we said earlier. That's the reason that do a monthly tournament or 2 to get used to that. Just get your system down, and don't get in a hurry. It took you a long time to catch that fish sometimes, and don't get in a hurry to get that photographed. I'll be honest with you. I have a system where I take a breath before I put the fish on the board and try to take a photograph to make sure I got everything sitting where it needs to go. The phone's ready to go. Because when I get in a hurry, I know that's when disaster strikes.
Yeah, it's hard not to get in a hurry though.
I know that's just, I'm always fighting myself. Yeah, because where you caught that one, there's probably 3 or 4 more.
When we were pre-fishing at Banner, I remember I hooked a big monster off a frog, and Darren was sitting there, and I didn't even reach back to my net. I just wanted to get that fish so fast, and Darren was yelling at me, "You would have lost that. You could have lost that thing. You should have grabbed your net." And I'm like, "Nah, just slip it." Pulled a big chunk of grass out of there, and it worked out fine. It was no big deal. But in a tournament day, I would have lost that fish probably. Nets are important. Save you a lot of heartache with the net. I can't tell you how many times in tournaments I've netted a fish and the jig pop out right when I'm got it under the net, and I'm like, holy cow, glad I used the net. I mean, it's pretty convenient.
Awesome.
Tether your phones. You don't want to lose your phone. Someone loses a phone every year. I don't know why? But someone always loses a phone.
Phone. Lost a rod, an expensive one. But
I've lost rods and reels. Lots of that. I put a whole combo in the water one time. Intentional, like I literally just put it in the water. I caught a big monster fish, and I was so excited, and I put that fish, measured it, and then threw the fish back in the water, and then was looking around. And I'm like, where'd my rod and reel go? And I just laid it in the water. I got so excited.
I did the same exact thing, but 2 years ago, Dustin.
Yeah, I mean it's.
Yeah, and I couldn't figure out my mind how I lost it. I just knew it was in the water. And then that was the first time I ever had a GoPro going in my kayak. And I looked back at the footage, and I was so excited to have this fish in my hand. I literally had my hand over the water, and I released my rod to grab the fish.
Yeah.
Well, what did I think was going to happen?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I would suggest having with you a lure retriever, the kind that have the dulled treble hooks on them. I don't think I've ever used it to retrieve a lure, but I have gotten 2 rods and reels out of the drink with it.
Yeah. I got a rod back with a big treble hook once. That can be convenient.
I marked mine. I might go back later on this spring. Now I put them in because I didn't have a black pack at the time. On the sides of the big rig, they have the staging on both sides where you can put them in there. I just didn't have it tethered down. It was sitting on there, and I hooked into a flathead, almost 40-pound flathead, pulling me around the lake. And as soon as I pulled him up next to the boat, his tail came up, smacked it, popped up, and right down in the drain. Spent an hour trying to drag a jig, try to drag a big crankbait, could never get it. So I just marked it, and it was a bunch of grass. So I was hoping maybe this spring before the grass grows, I can come back and find it.
See, in my mind, that rod and reel did its job. Caught a big fish. It's okay. It's gone.
Just I used to boat all the time. I used to have a 27-foot crown line, and every year somebody had to put the glasses in the water that we didn't have any floods.
I know Larry lost a real expensive combo last year, and I think I told him, I'm like, but losing this stuff, it's the great excuse to go buy more stuff. So it's okay.
You mentioned tether and stuff. One thing I learned is that you can get carried away with that. I just, we do spend a lot of money in rods and reels, but if I overturn, or if for some reason that if I come out of that kayak and it's upside down, the last thing I want is 7 or 8 lines just in there for me to get tangled up in. I would rather lose that stuff than get myself tangled up in a line.
That's kind of how I am. I tether my phone. I know James is a big tether. He likes to tether a lot. But I tether my phone. That's it. And my keys are always in a box that's in a cubby, so I can't lose my keys. Other than that, I don't tether anything. You lose rods and reels. It happens. You just hope that you lose them when you catch a big fish. The worst is when you lose them and it's stupid. You break a rod on a tree or something. That's aggravating. But if you catch a fish and you lose it, hey, that's good. It did its job.
Yeah. So, we're hitting on equipment issues, or equipment suggestions. So, Dustin, you've been doing this a while, so you've accumulated a lot of gear, I'm sure. What do you think would be the minimum that a rookie should have with them? I've seen guys anywhere with 3 rods to 10 rods with them in a kayak. What should a newer angler be focused on?
I think you should at least minimum have 2 rods and reels. And you can get by with a lot with 2 rods and reels. I'm going to be honest. Most tournaments I go to, I'm fishing with 2 rods and reels the whole time because I kind of have an idea of
jig. Every time you want.
Yeah, I got a jig, and then I got like a chatterbait or a swim jig or something. And those are probably the two lures I'm throwing the whole day. Maybe bring a spinning rod, maybe 3, maybe 2 bait casters and 1 spinning rod in case you need to go something lighter. That's probably minimum that you need. And my biggest thing too is when you get started, it's better to kind of get some higher quality stuff. And I had maybe 3 combos, 2 bait casters, 1 spinning combo that are kind of multi-purpose, than to buy a bunch of cheap stuff. And the example I'll give you is when I think it was 3 years ago, it was Kessler's first year. He had some cheaper stuff, and I told him, I'm like, you're gonna want to get a lot of cheap stuff. And I was like, you're gonna want to upgrade some of that stuff at some point. And then he kind of blew it off like it wasn't a big deal. Then he kept breaking line and stuff in tournaments and was wondering why. Didn't understand why, and the eyes were all falling off on his rods. And it's like, man, I'd rather have a couple good setups that I'm pretty confident in, and they don't need to be super high quality. I mean, anything at the $100 level is usually pretty good. It might not be the most sensitive. It's not going to be the most light. But at $100, $100, $120, you assume there's going to be some durability and it's going to be a decent product. Then you're just paying for things to get more sensitive and lighter when you start going up these exponential prices. I mean, at some level, there's diminishing returns. I mean, is it really worth getting an NRX that's $800? Probably not. I mean, I don't.
I think my first one, when I first started fishing again, I picked up a Black Max with a cheap rod. I think I was told $50 combo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I didn't know. That was good stuff back in the 80s. I was ready to go, and then I started buying a couple other things and started looking online, and there's a complete difference from that combo to now just like a $200 rod, $100 reel is a huge difference.
Yeah. And I just don't want to be fighting my equipment. I mean, so to me, I'm an Abu Garcia guy. I've always used Abu Garcia reels, and to me, the lowest quality Abu Garcia reel I'd buy is probably the Revo X model, because it's a nice, dependable model. It's got good innards. I mean, it's easy to use, casts good for. I mean, it's not going to cast super light stuff, but it's a nice reel. I mean, I don't have any, and it's I think you can get those for like $100. When they're up there on sites and stuff. So I mean, that's kind of, they make the Revo X spinning one too, and that's a pretty nice spinning reel. I think I have a couple of those. I don't use them anymore, but I still have some of those. But I just don't want to be fighting my gear ever, because to me that's the worst. Is when your gear is grinding, or like I was telling you guys earlier, I have one reel that I can't get a squeak out of after cleaning it 10 times. And that would aggravate the shit out of me on the water. I'd be infuriated the whole day. So at that point, I'm shipping it off and getting it fixed, because I just want my stuff to work and not bother me. And that's where I kind of think price wise. If you get over $100 for a reel, $100 for a rod, you're probably in a good level that you're not going to be fighting your equipment too much. And I'm also a huge brand loyalist, not because it's good. I mean, I've used some of my friends' Shimano reels and Daiwa reels. I know they're better than the Abu stuff I have, because I'm still using the older generation Abu stuff. But I like that every single rod and reel I pick up feels exactly the same. All my reels are the same. I mean, I have, just from cleaning these, I mean, I got like 3 of the same rockets, all the same. I got for more cranking stuff, I have all the same STXs. They're all the exact same. All my rods are the same brand. Kistler. I like the Kistler rods. I always thought they were a good company. They have a lot of different price points, so you can kind of scale what you want. And I just like when I pick something up, everything is the same every time. Every reel feels the same. Every rod feels the same.
Struggle now too, because I have everything's different. I got a 13 reel. I got a Shimano reel. I got a Daiwa. I mean, I've got every one of them's got different things. Just mostly because I want to see what I like, I guess.
Yeah.
Pick one up and cast it and use it for an hour, and it's fine. And I'll reach back, grab the next one, and because I'm not used to that different rod and that different reel.
Yeah, and again, I was the same way. I didn't really know what I wanted, and so I'd look up online, what's the best for this, and then you'd buy that one. And what's the best for this, and it would be a different brand. And what's the best for this, and it'd be a different brand. So you'd get a bunch of these different brands.
I think that's right.
But then after a while, you're like, I really like this one. And even though Abu Garcia doesn't make the best reel for every single different type of technique, I would rather just have dependable reels that all feel the same. They all maintain the same. All mine have the same maintenance. I had a couple that had rusty bearings this year when I was cleaning. I must have dropped that rod in the water a little bit at some point. But because I've been using the same Abu Garcia reels for years, I have a basement filled with backups. I just popped some bearings out of those and threw them in, and they're back working 100%. I mean, it's like I said, there's a benefit to using this, just picking a brand and saying, I don't care if the best BFS reel is made by Daiwa. Abu Garcia makes one too, and I'm sure theirs is just fine. I mean, so I don't know. Yeah, I kind of, I like the, it is neat. I know there's been a lot of guys over the years that are in the league that always are just buying the best of the best stuff from the different manufacturers, but I'd rather just know what I'm fishing with and know what it feels like and have it work, and that's that. I'm not going to go any further, but yeah,
I would second that, because I've been through the same thing. So I really only started bass fishing much about 6 years ago, and I had like a garage sale, basically, selection of rods and reels that I'd buy. One would be like you said, an Abu. One would be a Shimano, and it'd be different models. And I've just, in the last 2-3 years now, like every birthday, every Christmas, anniversary, whatever. If my wife asks me what I want, it's going to be another Shimano reel or another rod and reel combo that matches one they already have. Because what I found is like just something as simple as adjusting the drag. They all adjust the drag somewhere else, and I just want the same thing in my hand every
There's
time.
nothing worse. You're fighting a fish and you're like, shit. You can't find something on the reel, and it's just easier to have everything identical. But which does add one issue though. Like if I have none of the reels I use are made anymore because they've moved on to different generations. So what happens when I get one go bad and it can't be fixed? Do I have to buy like 15 new reels?
eBay. Go to eBay. See what you can find.
Just keep buying them used. I don't know.
Well,
Maybe I'll switch to Shimano. Everyone's using Shimano. Maybe I should get those.
That's what I've been buying.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Puratos look nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then rods are the weirdest one to me. I mean, I know everyone always said early on when I started fishing, invest more money in your rods. But to me, I feel like the diminishing returns in a rod, you hit those faster up the price point than you do on reels, because I can tell a difference between a $200 reel and a $100 reel. I can't really tell much of a difference between a $200 rod and a $500 rod. Maybe it's lighter. Maybe if you're super micro fishing, you'll feel it more sensitive. But in most cases, I don't see how people pay that. Like I said, some of these rods these days, $700, $800 a rod. To me, that's insane.
No, and I think kayak fishermen are harder on equipment than guys in boats. I mean, I know I am. I just can't see spending $400 or $500 on a rod and putting it in a kayak because you're gonna just beat it up.
Yeah, I started buying more expensive rods a couple years ago, and it was only because as I got older, I kept getting wrist pain from sitting there offshore jigging all day. So I moved from the KLX models that Kistler made to the helium models, just so they were lighter. Other than that, I'd still be using the KLX. I thought they were great rods. And then if you're cranking, if your technique for fishing is chatterbaits and crankbaits and stuff, you're moving fast, who gives a shit what kind of rod you're using? Because the fish are going to basically set themselves. I mean, you're going to feel them when you get hit on a chatterbait. So, but yeah. So to answer the question, if I was starting out and had no equipment, I'd want 3 rods and reels for a tournament. I think that would be successful.
Dustin, do you fish more braid and then run a leader on the end of it, or are you more?
I've tried it all, and right now, every reel I have besides 2 has braid on it, and here's why. I really like the 100 going with fluoro. When fluoro technology started getting better, I switched a lot of my reels over to fluoro. But then I started noticing about a couple months into a season, because I probably fish once a week, 2 days a week, once spring hit starts. And I started noticing that I would start breaking line a lot on my fluoro, and I'd have to replace it. And that fluoro, when you're out there in the sun all the time fishing a lot, the durability on that stuff goes to the crap pretty quick when it's getting the UV light. And to me, I'm not spending the kind of money that fluoro costs to replace line 2 or 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Just not going to do it. So that's, even though I really like the fluoro, I went back to braid just because it's cheap. I run this. Shoot, I took all the braid off these reels this year, and that braid was probably 4 years old. And I don't even buy expensive braid. I just get the spider wire, Durabraid. That's what I use. And like I said, I think there's a benefit to the fluoro. I like it, but I'm not paying for it. So, yeah, maybe if I was a pro angler and I was out fishing for big time money, and then maybe I'd do it. But with how expensive it is, I'm not doing that. But then I put mono on all my crankbait rods. So any crankbait reel, I always just throw mono on it. Usually put a little maybe 6 to 10 inch fluoro leader or something on there. But yeah, it's braid to fluoro for pretty much everything for me.
What knot do you use for the braid to fluoro?
I've tried a lot of them. What was the last one I tried?
I like the Alberto knot.
Yeah, the Alberto. I was using that, but what I found with the Alberto is if I'm in a hurry and I'm in a tournament, sometimes I stick that tag in through the wrong side, and then I'll it'll seem like it's tight, and then I'll hook a fish and it'll slip. So basically, I just use the double uni. The double uni's fail safe. It's not as
I know.
tight and small. It sounds terrible going through the guides. But if I'm in a tournament and I'm in a hurry and I need to tie a leader and I want something that I know will work, regardless of how crappy I tied it, double uni. But sometimes before a tournament, when I'm getting everything set up, I'll use something like the Alberto or tie a fancier knot that gets through the eyes easier because I have time to sit with my truck and play with it. But when I'm doing fluoro changes on the kayak, I'm double uni and go.
Whatever's I'm not a knot tire. I want to be a fisherman, so
Yeah.
fingers don't always work so well. So whatever is easiest, yeah.
Then for the fluoro to the lure, I mean, I'm using what's the Palomar or whatever. I think that's what it is. I think I use Palomar for everything. Sometimes I'll use the uni knot for that too, just because it's quick and simple. So it just depends.
Yeah, it's proven to be a heck of a knot on just about anything you tie it in.
Yeah, I mean, knots. You can go down a huge rabbit hole of trying to figure out new knots. It's and some, like I said, there is a benefit to learning how to tie a bunch of them and using a lot of different ones. But at the end of the day, when you're in a tournament, just tie the knots that you know work and call it a day. Double uni always works. That's what I'm going with.
Works, don't fix it.
What's that?
If it works, don't fix it.
Right.
Yeah. Not that I won't try.
No, when it's cold out like this, I'll sit here and at my desk and try new knots all the time. Why not? Yeah. And maybe I'll find one I like better. But like I said, there's little tiny things that if you miss on some of those other ones, they just collapse on you, and you're just like, should have tied a double uni. Work every time. But I'm sure you guys get your fishing licenses. That's always important. What, March something? They don't expire till March, so we got time. Usually,
now you can buy multi-year ones in Illinois. You couldn't do that before.
Yeah, I never do that because it's too expensive for me.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can buy a multi-year one being from Missouri.
I don't know. They just started, I think, last year in Illinois, and it's the same. I think the same price.
I didn't know Illinois went to multi-year.
Yeah, you can buy 3-year license now. Tournaments are generally on Saturdays. Try to go into that body of water on Saturday, just what the traffic's going to be like.
Yeah,
I mean, some of those places you got to have a different strategy because you can't get in the main lake without getting ran over.
No, that's why in Kincaid I don't ever go out to the main lake because sometimes that lake can get pretty tough.
Yeah, but we just need a track.
No, I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. I mean, just being around guys that I don't have any friends that fish. They're all doing other shit. Just to be around other people and try to learn. And a few times I got to fish with somebody. I got to fish with Will Abbott a couple of times. I know him from another friend. I met him out a couple of times out there, and he showed me a few things. And so I'm just going to learn. I have no expectations if I can catch one fish, I'm happy. I have no expectation of anything. I just want to go out there and learn from everybody and hopefully improve as the season goes. That's all I want. So,
yeah,
that's a good way to start the season. But as soon as you see, if your fifth tournament, where the same guys are cashing the check, you start to get pretty motivated to beat them.
Oh yeah, I want to improve, but I know I'm not that good. I'm not worried about it. I just want to have some fun.
But yeah, that was honestly one of some of my motivations that got me into doing tournament fishing were it was an excuse to go fishing on Saturday because a lot of times I just fish during the week. So it was like, I go on the weekend if I have it booked on the calendar that I have a tournament. Yeah. But then number two is, when you get back to the ramp, I always laugh at this because a lot of the non-tournament guys I know always hate tournament fishermen for some reason. But to me, I want to go out and be able to catch fish. That was my whole motive. That was my major motivation for tournament fishing is if I learn how to fish in tournaments and learn from other people, I'll be better at just fishing and it's more enjoyable. Because I don't know how many times I go back to the ramps and you run into guys and they're like, how'd you do today? And you're like, oh, pretty good. They're like, really? I only got one fish. And you're like, well, yeah. But fish in tournaments, so I've been doing this a long time. Yeah, I got like 30. So it's kind of to me, it makes fishing more enjoyable because you just get better at doing it. I mean, it baffles me that guys can go out and sit for 8 hours day on end and catch one fish when you could do something like join a club or an organization or have friends and go out and learn how to get better at it, so that when you go out, you're catching more fish than just sitting there watching your line do nothing. But
that was my point. Is I really wasn't. I'm not interested in really so much tournament fishing. I just like to go out and be out in the wilderness and quiet and fishing and having fun. But I'm not very good at it. So this is my way of learning, and I mean, that's all I care about. So
yeah, just keep an open mind and have fun. The skill will come. Yeah. Guys, I want to thank all of you for taking the time tonight to add. I think this is going to be a really valuable podcast episode, especially for anybody that's looking to get started. But Dustin, thanks for sharing your knowledge. You've always been literally an open book. Anything that you're trying to help other people out all the time. That's really admirable. And Jake, Keith, thanks for taking time to be here and great questions, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate you bringing me on here and talking. Yeah. Nice to meet you guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we only got another month.
Yeah, we'll be on the water before we know it.
Every year I look back in my notes. I think February 20th is the first time I've ever been out. The earliest I've ever been out.
Very early.
So usually it's March. Mid-March is kind of the average.
Was the first tournament April something? First week in April?
Yeah. April 12th, I think.
Well, that's another good learning experience thing too. Is I know everybody gets real antsy in the spring. Just remember, if the water temperature and the air temperature do not add up to at least 100 degrees, that means if you fall in the water, you're probably going to die, because there's not much chance that you're not going to get hypothermia with how cold the air temp and water temp are collectively for you to warm up in a fast enough time. And I have a friend that spent a week in a hospital because of hypothermia like that. So make sure you're really checking the air temperatures and water temperatures before you get out in the spring. Everybody wants to get out early and get on the water and check all their new Christmas presents out and stuff. But unless you got a dry suit on, I wouldn't be going out there.
A dry suit and a buddy that'll help you in a pinch. And I keep a kit with me, especially if it's cooler and cooler temperatures. I keep a dry bag in my hull that has a towel. It has actually I carry a flare to start a fire, because matches. I've tried to start a fire with trembling hands and it doesn't work when you're that cold. But I figure at the very least, I can get a heat source as soon as I can get to land and get dry clothes on, and that's a big help. But plan for it. Hopefully, it never happens. But that's a positive way to end the podcast. Way to go, Dustin.
Hey, I'm just telling you. Hey, man, it's a great. Everybody gets antsy.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to wait another couple weeks.
Yeah.
Or, like I said, go get a dry suit and go fish all winter long. I'm sure it's fun. I'm not doing it. But...
knock yourself out.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So if you're watching today, if you're still with us, please like and share the podcast. We can keep these episodes coming to you. Guys, thanks again and have a good night.